All right, the time's come for us to take a look at basic summarization in utilization with EIGRP named mode operations. Let's cut over to our equipment and see what it is we want to be able to accomplish. Like I said, I'm going to create some loopbacks on R1. I'm going to advertise those as 11.11.0.0/24 all the way down to 11.11. Actually, we won't do 0 there. We will do, again, 7 of these. So it'll be 7.0/24. All right, so let's go ahead and create those loopbacks. So we will cut over to R1 and let's make them. We'll start with loopback 100. Config T, interface LO 100, IP address, I said 11.11.11/24. We'll go ahead and create 101. And we will say that we're going to do this with .1.11, 102. We will do .2.11, 3, .3.11. So you can see the logic. It's pretty straightforward. I highly recommend that students use labs like this to be able to walk through just about any technology that you want to demo, so that you can get a firm understanding of what's happening. Because at no point in your studies, when you're preparing, will you learn more than when you're actually preparing labs to try to illustrate how much you know. Because what will end up happening is you're going to find that a lot of vendors advertise or teach these technologies using pretty fixed rigid environments. Now, I mean, admittedly, we have a pretty rigid environment here, but what I'm getting at is that a lot of times when these things change, when these configurations, LO 107, when we make modifications or we start illustrating some of these, sometimes they modify the topology such that it's going to be non-problematic during the demonstration. But we as students, when we sit down and we start doing it, all of a sudden the crap just doesn't work the way we want it to. Which is why I like to do these ad hoc scenarios whereby we take what's happening and we deploy them and we see exactly what's taking place in our environment. So right now I've created my loopbacks. Do show IP, interface brief, exclude assigned addresses. And we have those loopbacks, 100 all the way through 107, advertising the proper prefixes. Now, these are not running in EIGRP. Do show IP, EIGRP, EIGRP, interface. They're not running. So let's go ahead and advertise those. So router, EIGRP, named, remember, named mode operations, address family, IPv4, autonomous system 10, and now what I want to do is I'm going to say network 11.0.0.0 and advertise everything. Now I'm doing that because if I add a interface 8, I want to demonstrate how things are going to look with regard to how we do these summarizations. So right now, do show run section router. And we see 11's being advertised. So let's go over to R1, I mean R22 in this instance, excuse me, end. Show IP, EIGRP, interface, not interface, show IP route. And let's see if we see 11. And we do, we see all of those 11s. Notice they're right here. 0.1 all the way to 7. So just for verification, like we did on the other end, well, let's trace route. So let's trace route to 11.11.0.11. And we're load sharing across R2 and R3. So let's illustrate that. So traffic going to here is actually being load shared this way such that it can reach R1. Now, the whole benefit here is the fact that we want to be able to change how R1 is going to advertise these prefixes. So what we're going to do in the beginning is let's just do a very simple scenario. I want to advertise a /21 prefix out of both 00 and 01 on R1. So I still want to do load balancing. And the way that I'm going to be able to ensure that I do load balancing is I'm going to go to R1 and I'm going to advertise these out such that we're using this summary. So let's make that actually take place. So Let's cut over to R1. Let's take a look at what's going on. Well, let's say interface E00. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say IP summary address EIGRP 10. And what do I want to summarize? I want to summarize 11.11.0.0. And I want to say 255.255. And I'm going to advertise my 8 prefixes. So that means if I subtract 8 from 256, I'm going to have 248. And hit enter. Let's go and do the same configuration under E01. Show run interface E00. Show run interface E01. We can see we have the configuration. Now let's go over to R22 and take a look and see what we have. Show IP route and see what we have. Well, let's see. Prefix wise, let's look at our 11.11.11s. Well, right now we have 11.1, we have 11.2. Let's see if I can't scroll down a little bit more carefully. And I have no summaries. No summaries are being advertised by that device. Well, let's double check on R1 and make sure that we did our config properly. Show. Let's just look at one of them. Show run interface F or E00. And what we see here is that we are advertising. It's 11.11. It's 255.255/.248.0. But the problem is we didn't do it in the right place. So let's remove this configuration. Config T interface E00. And I'm going to come up here and just say no summary address. Do the same config on 01 and say no summary address. So if that's not where I do my configuration, where do I do my configuration? Let's look at that. Do show run section EIGRP. Well, remember when we did our configuration for authentication keys, we did it under the AF interface configuration. Maybe that's where we'll need to do it. So let's take a look. So let's walk through this step by step. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say router EIGRP named. Do I have the option to do it anything here? No, nothing in here with the idea of summary address. So let's try address family IPv4 autonomous system 10. And let's see if we have any entry capability here. Well, we've got network, we've got neighbor, we have a number of points. There's that AF interface. So let's do that. Let's say autonomous or address family. And I want to specify it for E00. So that's going to be the one pointing to Cat1. Now if I do my context sensitive help, let's see what we have as options. Well, we have authentication. We have dampening. We've got BFD, which we'll be talking about when we wrap up the majority of our protocols. And notice right here we have summary address. Well, let's give that a try. Let's say summary address. Well, what do I want to summarize? I want to summarize 11.11.0.0.255.255.248.0. Let's see if there's anything else in here. But the really cool thing about this is inside of our named operation, I can actually advertise the slash that I want to use. Let's say I want to advertise /21. Now, that's going to cause my link to go down. Why? Because I configured a summary. So now we're seeing some stuff. Let's cut back over to R22 and see what this modified. Show IP route. And let's see what we have for our 11s. Notice now we have a /21 that we're learning from R2. That's that link that we're coming through. Let's see, 00. No, we're learning it from R2. Yes. So we're learning the summary from R2. So it's coming this way. It's being advertised through through E00 up to R2 and then down to us. And that we know that's happening because it's telling me specifically here that I'm learning about my /24 prefix from the device that has the address 10.1.222.2. 2, we know that 222.2 is R2. So that's where I'm actually learning this prefix. Now that means I have the more specifics still. I've got the /24s that I'm learning. Now what I said is I wanted to make certain that we learned the same prefixes through the same neighbor, or through the same prefixes from all of our neighbors. So what we want to do now is let's go back over to R1 and modify the config, because what we need to do is we need to be in the AF-interface configuration for E01 now, and I'm going to pump in the same summary address command. Now, one of the things that I've dearly come to love about named EIGRP operation is the fact that now the syntax is so much more intuitive. We don't have to squeeze EIGRP and an autonomous system number somewhere in the middle of the configuration that looks like possibly the worst or the least intuitive place that we could shove it. We're in EIGRP, so all of the commands that we have access to in the context of our named operations are available to us. So rather than it being IP summary address EIGRP 10 and then the summary, it's just quite simply summary or dash address and then the address that we wish to summarize. So with this being done, let's take a look and see what's happening on R22 with regard to our operation. So right now I should have two prefixes or two ways to get to the 11.0.0.0/21 prefix. Now, again, just to drive home the point, we just did this particular scenario for the purposes of doing the minimization of the amount of information that's in our routing table. If I had 1,000 prefixes, I could summarize all, maybe some, or do some in groups. Now, the main thing that I want to point out here also is the fact that if I were to add another prefix, just like we did in the context of our classical operation, I'll create interface LO 108 and say IP address 11.11.8.11 show IP EIGRP interfaces. 8's now participating in EIGRP. Let's go to R22. Show IP route. And I'm going to say for 11.11.80.255.255.255.0. And what I'm going to see, I'm actually going to be load balancing. And the other element that I'm going to be wanting to pay attention to is the fact that I'm learning this as a /24. I'm learning it as a /24 because it fell outside of my summarized range. So the whole point here is that I would have had to have borrowed another bit to be able to advertise that. Let's look at that real quick. So on R1, I did my summarization under my named routing process, under the configuration for Autonomous System 10, using my address family interface config, and let's focus on E00. Now what I want to do is I want to modify my summary. My summary address said to use /21. What if I went with a 20 and hit it? Let's do the same thing for AF-interface 01 and advertise a 20. Resynced, everything's up and operational. Let's pop over to R22 and see what the results of our labors are. Show IP route, EIGRP, and what we're going to see now is we're advertising a 20 and a 21. That's what I want to illustrate. Let's cut back over to R1 and take a look at do show run section EIGRP. And what we're going to find here is our summary addresses are stackable, for lack of a better word. So what ends up happening here is I went in and I changed my configuration using the summary address command, and it did not remove the previous entry. So let's look at this. What I need to do is modify that. So let's remove the old entry. So I want to get rid of the one that said 21. Do the same thing for 00. Do show run section router. Make sure I didn't fat finger anything. 0, 0. Got my summary and my other summary. Now, what I also want to point out here is remember, we used /21. We applied a /20 after we took out the 21. Notice that the system is automatically using iOS to parse the system to let us know that we're advertising that as a 240. Where a 21 was a 248, where a, excuse me, not 248, 248, yeah, I apologize. Our 20 is going to be a 240. So now what should happen is we should advertise any and all prefixes. Let's go back over to R22. We should advertise any and all prefixes that match that summary in that summary. Show IP route. And what we're going to see here is for 11, I now have 2 entries, 4/20, and they're good to go. Now what I want to do is I want to see if we can't derive this using our number line. So what I'll do is I'm going to erase this. And all I'm going to do is just draw out the values from 0 all the way down to 8. And let's take a look and see what's happening here. Well, if I go in and I say 0 is 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, whoops, off the screen again. So if 0 is 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and 8 would have to be 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it'd be 8. So what would happen here is this would be a 1, 3 zeros. This would be a 0, all zeros. So right now what we end up looking at here is our numbers are only the same from here. So if I go, and this is just a blocking, so if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, down my list, 1, 2, 3, 4 tells me that my mask was 240. So the question now becomes, I'm going to be advertising 16 prefixes. So what happens the moment all of these values reach 1? What prefix would that be representative of? So that would be, in our scenario, it would be 11.11, and it would be, let's see, so it would be 8. Well, we'll just count it up. So this would be 3. Bear with me just 1 second. I'm sorry. This would be 15. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 8. Plus 4 plus 2 plus 1, which adds up to 7. So 8 plus 7 is 15. So my last network that I could advertise would end up being 11.11.15.0/24 on this device. And that would still be incorporated inside of my 240 summary. Let's do that. Let's make sure that that's actually the case. So over here on R1, I'm going to create a new loopback, a loopback that doesn't exist yet. That loopback is going to be interface LO115. It's going to have an IP address of 11.11. We said 15.11, and I'll just give it a /24. Now, do show run section, or not do show run section, but do show IP EIGRP interface, and 15 should be running. So now if I go over to R22, I should not see anything new in my routing table. I should just see the straight summary for 11 still. And here it is, my /20 and my 2 prefixes. Now the moment I come over here and I create 16, so let's go over to R1 and we'll say interface LO16, IP address 11.11.16.11.255.255.255.0. Do show IP EIGRP interface brief whoops, do show IP EIGRP interface, no brief. Notice, whoops, I created 16. I meant to create 116. I apologize for that. It won't affect the outcome. I'm just trying to use it for numeric sequences. So do show run interface LO16. I'm going to copy this and say no, interface LO16, interface LO116, paste in the IP address. And now when I go over to R22, what am I going to see when I do my show IP route for my 11 networks? Notice now I see 1116, which I'm now learning across because the 16 broke the bit barrier. So what would end up happening is if I wanted to have a mask that would incorporate 0 through 16, I would have had to have a bit here to be used, which means I would have had to have changed my summarization down to /19 or 224. So we've seen how this operates in the confines of named operation and in the confines of EIGRP classic configuration. With that being said, I'm going to wrap up this particular portion and we're going to talk more about summarization because it's exceedingly important for us to understand that other elements go into summarizing prefixes, but the net results are normally the same. To be able to achieve or to obtain or provide reachability to particular prefixes inside of our network, or a parachute whereby we can have a default route, because a default route also can be used in the concepts and context of summarization. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video where we're going to start playing around with default routes and summarization. See you there. Bye-bye.